On December 7, 1941, Japan rolled the dice on one of the boldest gambles in all of military history. Today, we're going to break down exactly why they felt they had to attack Pearl Harbor. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's late November 1941. A massive Japanese fleet, we're talking 6 aircraft carriers, battleships, hundreds of planes, slips out of port under total radio silence. They're on this long, dangerous journey across the Pacific, heading for a secret spot just north of Hawaii. Their target? The entire U.S. Pacific Fleet, sitting peacefully at anchor in Pearl Harbor. So, that's the big question, isn't it? Why? Why on earth would Japan risk absolutely everything on this one, single, all-or-nothing gamble? This wasn't just another battle. It was a decision that would completely change the course of World War II. To really understand the gamble, you first have to appreciate the pure shock and awe of the attack itself. It's just before 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning when the first wave of 183 Japanese planes fill the skies over Oahu. The Americans were caught completely, totally off guard. The planes immediately target the airfields, where U.S. aircraft were lined up, wingtip to wingtip, just perfect targets. Just 10 minutes in, the battleship USS Arizona takes a direct hit. It explodes in this massive fireball, killing over 1,100 crew members in an instant. And then, less than an hour later, a second wave of 170 planes comes in to finish the job. The attack was absolutely devastating, but it wasn't random. To get to the real why, we have to rewind the clock of it, back to the 1930s and Japan's growing imperial ambitions. So back in the early part of the 20th century, Japan was modernizing like crazy. The goal was to build a huge empire, just like the Western powers, to get their hands on natural resources, new markets, the whole shebang. But, and this is a huge but, they had one massive problem. And here it is, their Achilles heel. The Japanese home islands just didn't have the stuff you need to fuel a modern military and economy. They were desperate for more coal, more iron, and most important of all, oil. So what do? You go looking for it. In 1931, Japan invades Manchuria in China. Then in 1937, it explodes into a full-blown war with China. And at first, Japan is winning. But by 1939, the war gets bogged down into this brutal, bloody stalemate, and it's draining the very resources they were trying to capture in the first place. And all of this aggression was putting Japan on a direct collision course with another major power, one that was watching very closely from across the Pacific: the United States. You see, after World War I, America pretty much wanted to mind its own business. That was the policy, isolationism. But as the world got more and more violent, with war in Europe and Japan's brutal invasion of China, American public opinion started to shift. FDR began helping the Allies, making it crystal clear which side the U.S. was on. Now, for Japan, this was a massive, massive problem, because their entire war machine, their entire dream of an empire, was critically dependent on one single country for its most vital resource. And that number? It's just staggering. 80%. I mean, this chart really lays it all out there. In 1939, a full 80% of Japan's oil came straight from the United States. They were only producing about 6% themselves. So think about it. If America turns off that tap, Japan's military grinds to a halt. And in July of 1941, that's exactly what happened. After Japan moved into French Indochina, the U.S. had had enough. It froze all of Japan's assets, which basically cut off their ability to buy American oil. Britain and the Netherlands did the same. And just like that, overnight, Japan lost 94% of its oil supply. So you can imagine, this oil embargo plunged Japan into a full-blown national crisis. They were backed into a corner with a stark choice: either give up on their dream of an empire or go to war to take what they needed by force. So inside the government, two main ideas were on the table. There was the Northern strategy, which the army liked, and that meant attacking the Soviet Union to grab its resources. Then there was the Southern strategy, the Navy's plan, which was to strike south for the rich oil and rubber fields in British Malaya and the Dutch East Indies. But honestly, the Northern strategy was pretty much a non-starter. The army was already hopelessly stuck in China, and they'd just gotten a bloody nose from the Soviets in a big border battle. So really, by process of elimination, the Southern strategy was the only viable path forward. Now, negotiations with the U.S. had completely stalled. America's demand was simple: get out of China. But for Japan's leadership, that was unthinkable. To them, backing down now would be a national humiliation. It felt like the same thing as a total surrender. So, feeling their honor was on the line, they believed war was the only option left. Okay, and this is where you get the step-by-step logic of the Pearl Harbor gamble. Step 1, go south and seize those resources. Step 2, know for a fact that the U.S. is gonna come after you. So step 3, launch a surprise knockout blow at Pearl Harbor to cripple their fleet and buy yourself some time. Step 4, use that time to build up a massive defensive perimeter. And finally, step 5, the ultimate hope that a war-weary America would rather negotiate a peace than fight a long, bloody war so far from home. It was an incredibly audacious and complex plan, but it was all based on one single, catastrophic miscalculation about the sleeping giant they were about to attack. You see, Japan's entire strategy depended on a short war. They knew they couldn't win a long, drawn-out slugfest against the industrial powerhouse that was the United States. But the reality? Their attack guaranteed the very thing they were trying to avoid, a long, total war against a furious and completely unified America. And on top of that, the attack itself had some huge tactical mistakes. For one, the 3 American aircraft carriers, the future of naval warfare, weren't even there. They were all out at sea and escaped without a scratch. They also completely ignored critical targets, like the base's huge fuel storage tanks and the repair facilities. And because the harbor was so shallow, many of the battleships they sunk were later raised, repaired, and sent right back into the fight. The very next day, President Roosevelt addressed Congress, declaring December 7th a date which will live in infamy. And in that one moment, any debate about American isolationism just evaporated. The country was united, it was mobilized, and it was ready for war, the exact opposite of what Japan had gambled on. So, in the end, the attack on Pearl Harbor was a brilliant tactical success, but a complete strategic disaster. It was a gamble that won them the battle for a day, but guaranteed they would lose the war. Which leaves us with one final thought. What was Japan's single greatest miscalculation? Was it underestimating America's industrial power, or was it underestimating its will to fight back?